that that is taking place. So today is all about exits, exit readiness, and talking about how can you start preparing to finish strong. So my name is Marin Coots. Many of you I have met and or know. So great to see familiar names and faces, and wonderful to meet people that I have not met yet. I am a certified scaling up coach as well as a certified value builder advisor as well. You can read the other credentials and background that I have up on the screen there. I work with mission driven, legacy focused businesses. Most of the clients that I work with are generally in about the 5 million annual revenue or above and are about 3 to 5 years away from an exit or transition when we start working together. I just want to draw out one other thing in the points there, which is I've had the privilege of being a trusted advisor to the Best Managed Companies program. I have a couple clients who have been successfully admitted to this in the Canadian chapter. Um, and this program is one that is incredibly helpful for businesses who are intentional about scaling and growing, but also see the value in external validation, which can be particularly helpful as you get closer to an exit. The one caveat for this program is you do have to be 50 million in annual revenue or above to meet the minimum requirements. And it is a pretty rigorous process, but for those of you who that would be relevant for, I just share that for your background. So let's dive in. I'm going to open a polling question here right away. And I'd like you to reflect on where you are at with your business today as it relates to exit readiness. So, are you at number one, which is focused on growing and scaling and kind of thinking about selling? You know, it's an option here in the back. Are you starting your exit journey, meaning you're actively exploring options? Number three, are you actively in conversations with potential buyers? Or four, are you unsure? So, I'll leave that open for a few minutes for people to share where they're at. And while I'm doing that, I want to just introduce you to scaling up. This is the methodology that I use when I work with clients. It is all about helping you become more scalable, more profitable, and more valuable. And it focuses on four key areas or four decisions that every business owner must get right to successfully grow and exit. And these are around people, strategy, execution, and cash. A lot of great tools and insights available throughout this methodology. The unique thing is the same system that helps make you scalable also makes you sellable. And today we're going to be talking about how do you create options to finish strong. So I invite you to think about what does finishing strong mean to you personally and for your business. And secondly, think about what is your ideal timeline? Are you 5 years out? Are you 10 years out? Are you 6 months out? What does that timeline look like from an ideal standpoint? Now, scaling up is a methodology that's been used around the globe. Over 80,000 businesses have employed this methodology, and it's based on the book that you see on the screen there called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. You may be familiar with earlier iterations of this, which was called Rockefeller Habits or Gazelles. Same tools, although there are more interesting insights and tools being added all the time, but same basic premises, just rebranded to the term scaling up. Another interesting thing is the expansion of partnerships. So, as a scaling up coach, there are a number of different partnerships that we have access to. The one that I want to highlight for today's purpose is with a company called Cornerstone. You're going to hear me talk about them kind of off and on throughout today's presentation. And what this really brings forward is the strategic growth and the valuation component. So, when you combine these together, it really is about helping you grow and scale with confidence. So I'll touch on that more as we move forward. They do have a pretty amazing offer that I will share at the end of today's presentation for those who might find it useful and relevant. So as we get started, I wanted touch on and bring some highlights from a survey that Cornerstone recently conducted in 2025. And it is all on selling your business. So within this survey, it's really unique. It's kind of one of the first of the kind that exists. We can find lots of insights on kind of generic exit planning, but this really brings some key insights forward. And it was completed with businesses who were 5 million or more in average annual revenue, business owners aged 45 to 75, and really looking at what separates myth from truth in kind of that selling mindset and process. So when we look at the study itself, you can see here 750 businesses were involved in this. Pretty equal split between Gen Xers and baby boomers. Pretty widespread across the country. Now, this is a United States survey. I will bring in a few Canadian stats in a minute. You can see a pretty equal spread between the different revenue buckets as well as male, female. So, what did we learn? Well, one of the key things that stood out in this collection of 750 businesses was that 30%, so almost one in three, business owners have tried to sell their business in the past year and have been unsuccessful. 61% of owners have received interest from a buyer or buyer's representative in the past 12 months to purchase their company. So, interesting stats here in terms of there's interest out there in the buyer world to buy businesses, although there's a pretty significant portion of sellers who have tried to sell unsuccessfully. So, we're going to dive into what might be behind that. When we overlay this with some Canadian information that I was able to pull, it certainly validates that there is an acquisition wave in kind of the midst of us. So in the next 10 years, over $2 trillion in assets will change hands, meaning 3 out of every 4 small business owners will be looking to sell or exit in the next decade. This number is drastically higher, obviously, in the United States. And I think even the proportion in the States is, very high, but even within the next 5 years. So we know that the demand for businesses and particularly quality business is high. A couple other interesting stats that are specific to Canada, but I would beg to guess these exist in a similar fashion throughout the globe. And that is that about 1 in 3 business owners don't plan to sell until they are no longer well enough to run the business. 28% feel obligated to stay because they don't have a successor in mind or a successor that's ready. There generally are, what I call the 5 Ds, the 5 things that spur an unplanned business exit. And these last stats definitely fall into those 2. And that is death, disability, divorce, disagreement, particularly meaning with partners or shareholders, and distress, meaning financial or market pressure that is forcing an exit beyond the ideal timeline. So when we look at buyers versus sellers, there's an interesting dynamic that exists. When you see the numbers here for buyers, it really shows that in today's world, buyers have significant leverage. So most buyers will be represented by some type of buying group. Those groups will look at about 3,000 deals. Of that, a smaller percentage will move forward to the next stage, an indication of interest. So in that previous slide where we said, 61% have received an interest in purchasing their company in the past 12 months. That's what this would be, that initial indication of interest. Of that group, about half receive a letter of intent, meaning there'll be an initial price that's shared, formal expression, and from there goes through due diligence. And of that, about 5 to 6 end up resulting in a purchase. So that is less than 2% of all the businesses that get looked at. So when we say there's interest from buyers, but sellers often have a hard time selling, these stats really validate that. When we overlay that with sellers, most sellers go through this process once. The odd one might be a serial entrepreneur, and do this multiple times, but most founders sell their business once. So this really highlights that owners are at a serious disadvantage, really underdogs in the transaction process. So I'm going to read a couple stats here for you that come from this survey of 700 businesses from last year. As I read these, please share in the chat which of these resonate most with you. Which of these really capture, where your head is at as it relates to preparing your business for sale. So on the left-hand side, we have, about one out of every three businesses say they don't know who to trust or where to start when they think about exits. About half believe their retirement plans would be significantly jeopardized if they could not sell their business. About two out of every three feel their identity is deeply tied to their business. When we move forward to the right-hand side, we see that 54%, so just over half, believe their employees would leave if they knew their business was for sale. 43% state they don't even know what exit options exist. Over 60%, so almost two out of every three, say they haven't received an FMA or fair market analysis or certified valuation, meaning they don't really know what their business is worth. About one in three state that they've created an assumption, kind of a back of an envelope calculation of what they think their business might be worth. So I've got a few people sharing here in the comments. So yeah, don't know what exit options exist, certainly. Um, Anyone else, feel free to share kind of where your head is at as it relates to thinking about selling your business. One of the things that I hear with clients who have gone through this is really underestimating how much their identity was tied to the business. Even people who think, I'm going to be fine, I'm looking forward to retirement or whatever's next. Really, the shock factor of when that actually happens, that sense of loss of identity without kind of being tied to the business. So I'm just going to reflect back on the poll that I shared early on. And so we have about half the people on the call today are in growing and scaling mode. We have some in the active in conversations with potential buyers, and about a third not sure. So a fair mixed group with majority in that kind of early stage of just thinking about what exit options could exist. Very cool. So I want to move on and share a quick video. And this video is of Vern Harnish. He's the founder of Scaling Up, and he really talks about kind of a key nuance, kind of in that buyer-seller dynamic. So take a listen, and then we will come back.
The thing that's sad is how there's actually a playbook that these large corporations have for stealing an entrepreneur's company. And in fact, I interviewed two professors out of Chicago. They do not want to be named, who've actually taught these companies and PE firms how to do it. And they end up buying your company for a fraction of, first of all, what they promised, and more importantly, a significant fraction of what that company is likely really valued. And that is the psychological game they play.
It's kind of an interesting understanding there, which for most sellers who go through this process once don't realize that, the cards are kind of stacked against you. When we look at buyers, they have experience, they have teams, they've done this thousands of times. They know what to look for, they know how to play the game. So our objective is, how do we change this so you as owners and sellers have advantage and leverage in the process? And that's what we're going to spend the rest of today talking about. It really starts with understanding your valuation. What is your business worth today? So in general, a business valuation will be based on some iteration of EBITDA, so earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, and amortization, or some variation of profit. You'll hear that, oh, it's like 3x EBITDA in my industry, or some might be 6 times EBITDA. What they're talking about is, what is that multiple of EBITDA? And it really is a function of risk. The higher the risk a buyer feels they're taking on, the lower the multiple they will offer. So they really look at, how much risk does this business have? And they'll adjudicate that based on a number of different value drivers, which I'm going to introduce to you in a minute. Two businesses in the same sector with similar profitability won't necessarily have the same multiple. So, the key concept and takeaway is how do you de risk your company? Well, it starts with understanding what is your current value. So, as a scaling up coach, we help figure out what is important to you personally and to your business. We help connect you with the right people to do a valuation. Some coaches, like myself, as a certified value builder advisor, can do a preliminary estimate of value to give you a ballpark of, what is your business worth that ties into these value drivers that's more than kind of that back of an envelope. But it's really important to understand, where are you at today? Where is it that you want to be? And then what is that gap? Once we know what the gap is, then we can really figure out, what do we need to do to get you from where you are to where you want to be? And that's where the scaling up methodology comes in. So we work to build value, focusing on those four key decision areas: people, strategy, execution, and cash, to prepare you for a successful exit. It's really about creating optionality for you. So, side note here, a number of clients I've worked with have had the intention of building value to prepare for an exit. But in the midst of this, they fall back in love with their business and decide to keep growing and scaling. Maybe then build it to transition to a child, or do management buyout or something like that. In other cases, I've seen where really focusing intentionally on building value and growth actually catapults the business closer to explore exit options. The key thing here is the same things that help you grow and scale with ease make your business more sellable, creating options for you as the owner. So, as I introduce 9 value drivers, I invite you to take out a piece of paper, get a pen or a pencil, and rate yourself, your business, on each of these 9 values and value drivers. So, it's a 5 point scale. So, rating yourself a score of 1 would mean you really don't have structure or consistency in this area. On the opposite end, a 5 would be, not only is this area a true strength, it is a competitive advantage, meaning you are head and shoulders above others in your industry as it relates to this particular advantage. And then 2, 3, and 4 are kind of the nuances of in between. So 3 is average, you've got something, but it could be stronger. 2 is you've got to start, but not consistency. And 4 is you're pretty strong, but you're not best in class. So let's jump into these. The first one I want to introduce is something that we've coined: entrepreneur is redundant. And this might be one of the most important value drivers for any business. What this really means is, can your business run without you? Are you the bottleneck to decision making, to execution, to problem solving? Are you the person that deals with every issue, makes every decision, connects with every customer, touches every part of the business? Another way of looking at this is saying, could the business survive without you for 90 days? If the answer to that question is anything but yes, with little to no impact, you've got a lot of work to do. I really see kind of this inverse perspective with a lot of business owners, particularly those that are founders, who, if their name, family name, is also in the business name, there's this sense of, well, my name's on the wall, I need to make all the decisions, or I created this company, or I'm third generation, I need to know everything. But there's actually an inverse correlation to the value of your business. Buyers see that need and control and fingers in all the decision making actually has a huge risk factor. So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being this would be no issues, you could take 3 months off, you validated this by taking extended holidays, didn't have to check in, came back, and there were no major fires to put out, metrics, and everything was on track. Whereas a 1 would be, there's no way I could even fathom taking 3 months of holidays without the business completely falling apart. The next value driver is strategic planning. Buyers want to see a business that has a clear growth strategy. It's well planned, well thought out, it's documented, and most importantly, there is alignment throughout the organization. So, I work with a lot of businesses on strategic planning. And one of the things that I always say is a strategic plan is only worth its weight based on where it comes into daily conversations. Could anyone on your team clearly articulate what is your strategy and where are you at versus what you've said the ideal endpoint is? Do you have the measures that indicate how you're tracking progress? Could everyone share the same story? So, again, rate yourself on 1 through 5 on what that looks like currently for your business. Then we move to the third one, which is customer concentration. This is all about diversity of your customer base. You want to be in a position where no single customer accounts for more than 15% of your total revenue. If a single customer is 25, 30, 40% of revenue, this is a huge red flag for buyers. So think about, how can you diversify your customer pool to de-risk it? So a quick way of, understanding this too, in terms of your rating of 1 to 5, if you have no idea, what percentage of revenue your largest customer has, that might be a quick calculation to figure out as soon as we wrap up this call, which then probably puts you in the place of a 1. If you have, you understand the mix and slicing and dicing of your customer base, no single customer is more than 15%, you've got lots of diversity, then you're probably up closer to a 5. Then we move to recurring or predictable revenue. A buyer will pay more when revenue shows up on its own. This can be done through a number of different mechanisms, agreements, maintenance contracts, retainer work, subscriptions, renewals, anything that provides future predictability of revenue. So if you think about your total revenue, how much of it would fall into recurring versus transactional one and done? The higher the percentage, the higher your score will be on this. So again, give yourself a score of 1 through 5 based on how well you are doing currently. Then we move to systems and processes. This is all about understanding what are your key workflows, are they executed consistently, and are they captured for ease of training and replication? Does your company run on repeatable, consistent processes? Are they documented? Are they consistently used by all? If someone on your team, a key member of your team, were to leave unexpectedly tomorrow, would you be able to hire and train and get someone up to speed right away because all of the key things are housed somewhere other than that individual's head? So take a minute to reflect on that. Again, rate yourself 1 to 5. Then we move to key performance indicators or key objectives and key results. Buyers love companies that run on numbers and rhythms, not guesswork. When you track what matters, you can see problems early. So this goes hand in hand with strategic planning. Strategic planning is the big picture of identifying where it is you want to go, how are you going to get there? And KPIs really is that tracking mechanism of where are you at versus where you said you wanted to be. So it really is a way of indicating and showing how your business is doing. And it's more than just tracking revenue and profit numbers. Generally, it's a mix of leading and lagging indicators that will fall into financial, people, customer, as well as operations or efficiency. What are the metrics and the things that you track in each of those 4 buckets that help paint the story of where you're at and are you moving the needle towards where you said you wanted to go in your strategic plan? So again, just remember to give yourself a score on that one. Then we move to profitability and growth margin. This is all about your financial story. What kind of trend line does it show? Strong margins tell a buyer if the business is healthy and resilient. And within the scaling up methodology, we really focus on this would fall under the cash decision. And it's all about how can you make small increases that make a big impact? So, what would a 1% improvement quarter over quarter or month over month create when you think about profitability and cash for your business? Now, remember that a growing business requires cash. So it's really important that you understand where are you at and what does that trend line look like. Buyers want to buy business that have a strong profit line that's improving time over time and that trend line is going up. So give yourself your score on that one. And then we move to visibility. This is all about clean books and organized data. If things are unclear, messy, disorganized, it will come out in due diligence. Not only will it be a huge headache for you, it will elevate the risk profile to a potential buyer. So it's all about being able to get information quickly and clearly and having the confidence that it's accurate. So if this is something that you struggle with now, it's super important to get this figured out and cleaned up. When I think about the value drivers, this value driver as well as entrepreneur is redundant, really are kind of the foundational two. So, when I work with a client, if you don't have visibility, it's almost impossible for a coach to start, helping you determine what your growth plan is. So I would say like this is table stakes. Get this figured out first and foremost. And the last one is a strong team. So we call it 80% A players. And this is all about what is the strength of your leadership team, but your team throughout the organization. Now, A players are both top performers. They know what's expected of them. They know what they're accountable for. They're delivering the results that they are accountable for, but they also are a good fit with your culture and values. Buyers want to see strong leadership teams. They want to see the right people in the right seats doing the right things. This makes a business more transferable and more repeatable to a buyer. So, again, give yourself a score here of 1 to 5. And then I'm going to open our second polling question here, which is of these 9 value drivers, where do you see your biggest opportunity? Either because it's your lowest score or where you see the biggest potential for quick wins. Sometimes what we see when we go through these is, two can be very much tied together, and tackling them, really can, catapult progress in a number of different areas. So I'll leave this open for a little bit. I'm seeing strategic planning showing up. I'm seeing profitability and gross margins, as well as A players, a little bit on customer concentration. So kind of a mixed results here between everybody who's responded. Looks like profitability and gross margins seem to be rising to the top. So I'll leave that open for a minute to give everybody a chance to reflect on your scores and think about what is your top area. So as we do that, the question always comes up, so what? You know, knowing these 9 drivers, having kind of a basis of where you are currently is, foundational pieces. Now, what do you do with this information? So a quick win for you to take away is thinking about which value driver do you want to put intention around. Um, don't try to move the needle forward on all 9 simultaneously. That's, an easy recipe for disaster and distraction. What is the one you really want to focus on? When we look at the calendar year or business year, it's divided into 4 equal quarters. Each quarter is 90 days. The beautiful thing about 90 days is that as humans, psychology and research shows we can generally maintain attention and momentum for about 90 days. After that, it starts waning, we get distracted. So we really encourage thinking through in the next 90 days, what is it that you could do to move the needle forward on the value driver you chose? I like to think of it as, within that 90 days, a 13-week race. What is the end point you want to get to at the end of the 90 days? And then work backwards in terms of those 13 weeks that you have between here, now and there. What are the things that need to happen? Who do you need to get involved? Who might you need to hold accountable for doing certain pieces, even if it's yourself? What does that look like? What are the due dates? How do you kind of sequence it to make sure that you don't get to the end of 90-day period and realize nothing happened? You got distracted, you were putting out fires and didn't move the needle forward. The last piece is then thinking about how can you track your progress? So for each value driver, think through, is there a metric that would validate and show that I'm moving the needle? on this. So I'm going to close the poll now. I think it really shows that the one that stood out the most to people on today's call was around profitability and gross margin. So, really thinking through, there's a tool within scaling up we call the power of one. Also, a really interesting tool called Cash Flow Story, which allows us to really look and do some scenario planning of, playing with the different levers that impact profitability and cash, and what could that look like. To really think about what would a small change month over month, quarter over quarter create for you in building that financial story. Okay, I want to share a quick example here. This comes from the Scaling Up book. And the company was called Ambrose Employer Group, based in New York City. They focused on delivering high-touch human resource services to the financial and professional service sectors. It was founded in 1997. The owner, after 8 years, was stuck, kind of at that 2.5 million annual earnings, couldn't seem to break through that ceiling. He joined forces with Scaling Up, hired a coach, and really started implementing the execution rhythms, really focusing on planning cycles. So, strategic planning, annual cycles, quarterly rhythms, clear measurables, and aligning the entire organization around this. Something that sounds easy, but takes a lot of discipline and rigor, and alignment and clarity to do. This made a drastic change to the execution and consistency. So, fast forward, they scaled from that 2.5 million to 20 million, became a market leader. In 2013, they sold for a 200 million all cash offer. Full caveat, these type of offers are not normal. This is an extreme case. But the owner and founder here credited Scaling Up in the methodology to 100 million lift in his valuation. So it shows the potential when you take on a growth methodology, take it on serious, align and get the right people on your team to participate with you. So that's a good segue to the next piece here, which is how do you surround yourself with strength? So earlier we talked about buyers having all, these people around them that have the expertise, have the experience. Then we talked about valuations and understanding your current point, how to elevate your value to get you to where you want to be, bridge that gap. Now we want to talk about what does a selling team actually look like? So when we understand the gap and we build the value, now we have to build the right team. So this is both on the personal and business side to get you to where you want to be so you have optionality. Now, if anyone has tried to sit on a one-legged stool, you know it's possible, it's doable, but it's hard. Compared to a three-legged stool, which represents a deal team, which is comfort, stability, and ease of mind. So let's talk about what the benefits of having the right people on your team open up. So fundamentally, it's having professional negotiation help. It's about bringing multiple buyer conversations forward. I'm going to give you a real life example here in a minute. It's about faster, cleaner exits with higher valuations and far fewer surprises, particularly post close, where you sit back and have that sober second thought. Is this what you thought it would be when you first started talks with a potential buyer? Surprises in the ninth hour or after you've signed are no fun for anybody. So here are some of the different people to consider having on your team. So zero expectation that most of you would have these people lined up and in your corner right now. The goal would be to have a good relationship with each of these eventually as you get closer to preparing for that exit. So on the front end, we've got a business coach. That is really the quarterback, coordinates everything, helps you align your goals, brings the tools and methodology forward, and helps you guide decision making to ensure it aligns with those goals. Then we have your tax people, your CPAs, your tax advisors. This is all about protecting your net. So it's not just about, what is the deal itself, but what is the deal structure and is it tax efficient? Then we have an M&A attorney or lawyer. Now, this is not the same thing as your general counsel or the lawyer you've been working with who helped you with your incorporation documents, maybe helped you with some HR issues. An M&A attorney is a highly specialized legal expert. They see thousands of deals. They know the tricks that buyers play. They know what to look for in the fine print. And this is all about minimizing your post-close liability. Then, when we look at financial advisors and wealth managers, this is more on the personal side, and it's to help you kind of after the exit with that lifestyle planning as well as risk management. We also encourage engaging them early in the process because they are critical to help understand what is that number so that when we look to see what is the gap of what is your business valuation and what is your number and the gap that we're trying to fill, they're a key component of that. Estate planners can be particularly relevant if you have a legacy business, generational transfers, if there's trusts involved, an estate planner is certainly someone you want on your team. And then lastly, we've got our M&A advisor or investment banker. These are the people that bring the buyers to you and, are your professional negotiators and maximize valuations. So this is where the cornerstone partnership really comes into play. At the end of the day, there are a bunch of great investment bankers and advisors around the country. The key thing is that you've got someone who knows what they're doing and that they have experience in your industry. So when you put this deal team together, it really helps level the playing field, not just to get you a better deal and better deal structure, but peace of mind and bring collectively a better buyer pool to the table. It really helps build leverage through competitive dynamics, something that we call the power of multiple offers. So, this POMO, power of multiple offers, is really how you get the highest and best value for your one chance to sell your business. You want to get the valuation right. You want to build a team so you can finish strong with the finish that you want. It's really hard to get all the components right, especially if you try to do it yourself. Thinking about it, selling a business is not like a one-time event like moving into a new house. It has a long timeline, a long window, and it's really hard to see all of the blind spots. So here's a real life story that I want to share. So Andrew McConnell is a bit of a serial entrepreneur. One of his most recent ventures called rented.com. In the COVID era, he saw an opportunity that triggered him to really look at selling his business. And he thought, I know my industry, I know the likely buyers, I'll reach out and run the process myself and save myself some money. Fast forward, he reaches out to about 40 potential acquirers, contacting them all directly. He takes, the buyers take the meetings. They ask for information, he collects it, he shares it. They seem to show interest. Some even discuss some deal structures. Fast forward, nothing actually closes. 6 months later, he realizes buyers will happily learn about my company without ever committing to buy it. So, months of conversations and distractions, he hires an investment banker. The banker then introduces him to a whole new plethora of potential buyers, runs a structured sale process where now the buyers aren't just talking and consuming his time, they're competing for the right to buy his business. Offers start appearing, timelines exist, negotiations where he is in the leverage seat. The deal finally closes. And reflecting back, his words are, I was good at building the business, but that did not mean I knew how to sell a business. His summary is that not only, one buyer is talking to you, but when you have multiple buyers, they are not negotiating the price, the market is setting the price. And that's the power of having multiple offers and using a deal team that works on your behalf. So in this case, Andrew really talks about the benefit of bringing people that expand beyond the contacts you have, having someone negotiate on your behalf. Because the reality is, most offers will have some type of a long-term relationship between you and the seller. So it's hard to wear the negotiation hat while meanwhile thinking, I'm going to have to work with this person in some capacity, after the deal closes. The other thing is the importance of not getting distracted from running your business while you are running a deal process. If you are that main person, the reality is it's going to take a toll on your business. Profits might start to slip. You might lose key customers. You might lose key employees. And what is that going to do to your risk profile and what buyers will ultimately be negotiating and seeing as risk in that multiple? So my question for you is, why wait? We want you to finish strong on your terms. What is your ideal situation? And how do you start moving one step closer to get you there? Here is a quick slide that shows the timeline. So the purple dot there is where many of you are today. Some of you are further into this process, but if today is really all about starting to think about selling, that stage, where we talked about value building, looking at those 9 value drivers, de-risking the company, that's about a 2 to 3 year window to do that effectively and not leave money on the table. The actual negotiation time frame usually is about 6 to 12 months. So it's not short. It is a bit of a marathon. And then comes that part at the end, the orange part. And that's that transition phase. So unlike selling a house where you hand over the keys, the new buyer moves in, you wipe your hands, you're done. Selling a business often has a much longer transition phase. So for many, it's 3 to 7 years, either because that includes an earnout where you have to stay on, an hour an employee of the new owner and you've got metrics you need to meet, to get that last 30% of, whatever the deal price was. Maybe there's rolling equity, or maybe in order to find the right buyer, you had to be willing to finance that buyer. Whatever that scenario is, there generally is a transition phase. So it's important for you to think about, what can you start doing now to prepare and get ready for that so you aren't caught by surprise, you know, with those 5 Ds being, you know, death, either you, which would be horrible, someone in your family, key member of your team, disability or a health issue, divorce, disagreement, meaning with partners or shareholders, or distress. Something changes in the market or your financial position that triggers you to move forward um, with the deal process before you're ready. How do you mitigate that today? I want to offer you 2 things. The first is a free 1 hour endgame strategy session with myself. In this, will give us an opportunity to look through your value drivers, pinpoint where is the best place to focus your energy and intention on now, come up with a clear action plan that you can start implementing right away. It's also an opportunity to set some accountability metrics for yourself, to answer any questions in a safe environment that I maybe wasn't able to touch on today, as well as look to see, what scaling up tools might be the most beneficial for where you and your business situation are at today. So if that's of interest to you, use that QR code. It will take you to my calendar. Just note that I do travel a fair bit, so the sooner you can book in, the better chance you'll have of accessing a date that works for you. The second offer that I want to leave you with is one I alluded to at the front end, and this is from Cornerstone. If you have never had a formal valuation done, meaning you really don't know what your company is worth, then this might be something to consider. Now, generally, when you go to a valuation firm or an accounting firm, this can cost $5,000 to $10,000 to do. It's not an insignificant amount of money. Cornerstone is offering to all scaling up contacts, and because you showed up today, you will qualify for this. A valuation or a real market analysis for $5,000. You get a report with your estimated value right now, as well as the key areas to de-risk your company. The beautiful thing about this is they will update it for the next 4 years free of charge. So this allows you to really see, where are you growing value? Where are you de-risking the business? and really helps calibrate where you at in terms of bridging that gap between where you are now and where you want to be upon finishing strong. So again, there's a QR code there. If that's of interest, click on that. It will take you to a form. One of the last sections, it'll ask how found it. Just introduce or put my name there as Marin Coots virtual webinar, so that they know you're connected to Scaling Up, so you can access that offer. So as we wrap up today, I really want you to think about, where does it make sense to focus your energy? What does finishing strong look like for you? What is your ideal time frame to get there? Now, if you are a LinkedIn user, I encourage you to connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn. I regularly post about tips and insights on scaling, on exit readiness. I do also send out regular real life examples of businesses who have successfully sold, what their learnings and lessons were along the way. So if that is at all of interest to you, reach out with me through LinkedIn or through the email that is there. Happy to share resources. I do have a lot of resources on my website, so feel free to check us out there. And if you need those QR codes, they are up on the screen. I will leave them there for you to take. So as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time with me, whether this was your lunch hour or a portion of your afternoon, wherever you were dialing in from. Thank you so much. And please stay in contact with me. Just a note, you will get an email from us in the coming days, which will have a link to this video recording, as well as the two links that those QR codes take you to. So if for whatever reason you weren't able to capture them today, they will come through in that email. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them my way. We're pretty active on both LinkedIn and email on a regular basis, so happy to connect with you and answer whatever questions you have. And so as we depart, thank you for joining us, and think about, what is the one thing that you are taking on based on what you know now? What is one thing that you are leaving with that can help get your business closer to a successful exit and help you finish strong? Thanks again for joining me. And I look forward to connecting with you online or through social media in the coming days.